G'day and welcome to the Great Mini Rebuild Part 5. In this exciting episode, we take a break from boring bodywork and decide to put the engine together and then bolt it on the gearbox and then wrap it all up and put it aside and get back onto the boring bodywork. So in the last episode, we finished building the gearbox and we wrapped it all up, put it aside and got back onto the bodywork. So now we've pretty much finished the bodywork. I've finished patching all the major areas of rust that needed to have new metal put in. I've got all the new sills on. I've got the new boot floor. I've got the new rear panel underneath the where the boot hinges go. I've got the left-hand side rear quarter panel in and straightened up all that bodge that's in there on the wheel arch, and that looks quite good now. Overall, the bodywork is coming together, and really now it's more a matter of detailing. So, smoothing off the rough edges on some of my welding. I don't think there's any more holes that need to be repaired, but there's a few welds that I want to flatten out, and there's probably a little bit of tapping around to knock out a few little dents and things to try and get the metal work as flat as possible before we start and hitting in with the filling and the sanding. But the rest of the body is actually now pretty straight. My door gaps are good, the boot gaps are good, and it looks pretty good. Here's a few shots of the boot repair that I had to do. So this is pretty typical, cutting out the lower hinge rail or support, welding in the new panel that I got, and then making sure the boot fits with all the right clearances around the outer edge. And I think that looks reasonable. The gaps there are pretty consistent all the way around with the boot in the right position. So that makes me feel pretty confident that I've got the bottom part in the right place. The seams are all pretty good. I've got new seam caps to go over those, and I'm going to glue them on rather than put them on with the clips, and that should help prevent further rusting on those seams, which are very pronounced on the Mini. Some people weld those seams up and grind them off, but I sort of like it. It's part of the character, so I'm going to restore them, but I'm going to use glue to put it in place so that there's no real chance of water getting under those seams. So I decided to take a break from doing all the body work and give myself a bit of, something else to do, just to break up the monotony. So the engine block came back from the machine shop in the last couple of days. So I took to cleaning that with some acetone and getting it nice and clean, and then painting it with some engine enamel that I had lying around. This is MG red, which I know is probably not the right colour for a Mini, but hey, I like it on an engine. So that's pretty good. So I then pulled apart the head. This is it's a good head. It's one of the rarer models, but I pulled it all apart, sent it down the machine shop. So then it's on to assembling the engine. So first thing is to sort out the size of the Welch plugs here, because this is a Cooper S block, so it uses the 41mm Welch plugs. Just making sure they're the right ones. Then looking at a few of the peripherals that I've got. So the distributor here is, it's pretty grubby. The inside's not too bad, but it needs new bushes on it. The water pump, I think, as you can see here, has probably seen better days. So I'll probably just replace that. And the oil pump itself, that was a surprise. It's in very poor condition. Probably fundamentally the problem with why the engine seized in the first place. So I got a brand new oil pump on the way to replace that. So then it's time to put the engine together with all the nicely new machined parts. So drop the newly machined crank in, put in the oversized bearings, check them all, check the crank for end float to make sure that we had the end float within the right spec, and then sorted out the crank shims that go either side to hold the crank in the right place. I had to mill them down a little bit because 30 thou oversized ones were too big and the next size down 10 thou were too small. So we ended up skimming the back off the 30 thou ones to make them fit and give me the right amount of crank end float. So with the crank in and the conrods installed, it was time to put the gearbox on top or underneath the block. I chose to have the block upside down on the head side and then lift the gearbox in on top. Found that seemed to be the easiest way to do it. Then I discovered that the locating dowels that hold the clutch end cover in place were missing, and it slopped around on the bolts quite a lot, so I machined up a couple of locating dowels. With them in place, I was able to mount the clutch and the clutch cover and the flywheel all in place, and then it started to start installing some of the peripherals. So I fitted this with a high torque starter motor to replace the original, which was just too grotty for words. So nice high torque starter motor. I ended up buying a brand new distributor because this distributor comes with all, it obviously doesn't need the bushes, which I needed to put in the old one, but also it comes pre-fitted with electronic ignition or contactless ignition rather than having the standard breakers. So overall, it was actually cheaper to just buy a whole new distributor. I've also removed the old generator that was on this, and I'm fitting an alternator. So here's a brand new alternator, fairly cheap. It's like $145. So it's cheaper to put a brand new alternator on this than it is to try and fix up the generator. So that's mounted correctly. It's shimmed out so that the belt lines up nice and square with all the pulleys, etc., and looks pretty fancy. In this picture, you can also see I fitted a nice shiny new water pump to replace that the other worn out one, or the one that there wasn't much left of. And we've also fitted a screw-on oil filter rather than the old felt sort of oil filter that constantly leaks. I've also made up a few aluminium, what would you call them? They're reinforcing plates that go around the timing cover here. This is a pressed timing cover, and in my experience, they hardly ever seal without leaking. I did this on the MG, and it never leaks now. So this is like an aluminium spacer that I put under the bolts and over the top of the cover, and it just means that the cover is pressed down evenly all the way round rather than in the spots where the bolts normally hold it on. And in my experience, humble as it is, it just helps that timing cover from leaking oil all over the place. So with that done, I think it's fair to say the engine is pretty much done now, and except for the head, which when that comes back, I'll finish it. And so in the next episode, we'll be back onto the body and probably starting to look at undercoating and then seam sealing. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.